All right, we are recording. So this video, as it says above, is going to be about geometric terms and structures being made for my geometry students. They are getting into geometry after reviewing Algebra 1 for a little bit. There are going to be 6 specific structures in this video, or terms: point, line, plane, segment / line segment, and then array and opposite rays. So I'm just going to draw them, what they look like, a diagram of them, and then explain the different variety of ways that you can name them. There will be certain ways that I will say that I prefer as a teacher myself, that I want my students to name it, and they're typing in on a computer. So this is the way that, if you're watching this as my student, you should be typing in your answers for naming these structures. Okay, so first one, a point. So point, diagram of a point is going to just be a solid dot, and then a capital letter. Very important, it's a capital letter, okay? Not a lowercase letter, it is a capital letter. Capital letters are used to name or label points. So now if I was to go naming, so naming, for points, you have 2 options. Option 1, you can just call it A, capital A, very important, capital A. Not lowercase a, capital A. Not a cursive A either. It is just a capital standard A. Second option is to write out, and I know some students prefer this, so they just remember it better, more of an identifier to it. It's point A. Still needs to be a capital A. Can't be a lowercase a, still needs to be a capital A. All right, so these are the 2 options for a point. Next thing would be a line. Now, a line is defined as requiring 2 points. There has to be at least 2 points on a line. So when drawing a line, you have to have at least 2 points. And we can call this, let's call it X and W. Again, these are 2 points, so these are capital letters. All right, so I labeled these 2 points. And then if I draw a line through them, so a line has to have at least 2 points to define it. And these 2 points are going to be X, W. Have to put arrows on the end, or else if you don't put arrows on the end, then it becomes a segment. So arrows on the end, because lines go on forever, indefinitely. They never stop. Line segments do, and we'll get to that. So if I was to label this, so naming, or if I was to name this, got 1 option. If you're going to use just the letters, you can do capital X, capital W, with a mini line above it. That's a terrible, that doesn't look like a point, but with a mini line above it. Okay, that works. And actually, there's option 2, which a line doesn't go left to right, right to left. It doesn't matter. So you can also label it as WX with a mini line above it. Because you don't know, right? It's not going from left to right. It's not going from right to left. It could go either way. It goes on forever in both directions. So either of these work. Option 3, just like up here, we could say line XW. And then option 4 would be the same thing, WX. Okay, so those are your 4 options for labeling a line. Is a line, you can flip-flop them. And sometimes there might be more options, but if you're just looking at 2 points, using the same 2 points, those are the 4 different ways you can name it. For my students who are on Google Forms, you can't do this. So you guys are going to have to, my students are going to have to answer it in one of those two ways, because you can't type in a mini line above it. So you can't just type in WX, that doesn't work. So my students, you're gonna have to type in line XW, okay? Plane, so let's draw a plane. So we've gone from 1 point to 2 points. Hopefully you guys can surmise how many points a plane might have if we're going from 1 to 2 to 3. So if I'm gonna draw 3 points, call this just A, B, C. And then you kind of just put a parallelogram around it is the usual way to see it written, or drawn, I should say, as a diagram. This might not be the best parallelogram, just a little rectangle. Now, the important thing about a plane is it doesn't have, we've drawn boundaries so that you can look at it and envision it, but a plane actually goes on forever. A line goes on forever and a plane goes on forever. This actually goes forever to the left and to the right, and it goes forever up and down. It goes forever. Think of maybe if you're taking a science class and you've ever looked at cross sections of biology, or I don't know if you've ever cut something straight down and looked at cross sections. A plane is, it's flat and it goes on forever in all directions. So this is a plane. We give it borders so that we can envision it and kind of look at a specific section of a plane. So this plane, we're looking at this section where A, B, and C are on this plane. The other important thing is most planes may have a capital, I don't want to say a cursive, but maybe like a squiggly cursive. I don't know. I can't write cursive, was never taught. Good on you if you can write cursive. I cannot. So I just do a non-typical capital letter. All right. In the corner, it'll be in one of the 4 corners. So if I was to name this, so naming, one option would be plane ABC. Another option would be plane, not NAR, don't want to put NAR there. That's not NAR, that's not NAR, that's plane, okay. Plane BCA. I mean, you can just, right, you can rearrange these 3 letters. These 3 letters can be arranged in whatever order you want. But then the last option, I don't know, let's just call it the 3rd option for the sake of it. But the last option, you can use the capital, cursive, or italicized, squiggly, I don't know, whatever I draw it as, or whatever your teacher makes it, plane R. So there's my little fake cursive R. I don't know what a cursive R even looks like, but it's not, right? It's not this. It's not that. It's a little squiggly, italic, I don't know. I give up. But the point is you can label it with, or name it with, the little italicized cursive capital letter sitting in one of these spots. Ooh, I need to go backwards too. So that's a plane. That's a plane. That's how you can name a plane. I need to go backwards actually to a line. I forgot one way to label a line. You can also label a line. Let's say this is a lowercase r. So another way to label a line, just like how we use this capital, cursive, italicized R, is we can also use a lowercase for a line. Now, points are all capital. All right, so point, capital A, this point is capital X, capital W, capital A, capital B, capital C. All the points are capital, standard letters. This capital, cursive, italicized R is specifically for planes, and then this lowercase standard r is specifically for lines. So I could also, if I write it in here, kind of cramped this in, but you can also call this line R. All right. So this is also actually another way that if you're my student, you can answer it, is line R. Okay. Moving on from that. I'm sure I'll get questions. I kind of butchered that a little bit. My bad. Okay, segment. So a segment or a line segment is you take a line, basically, if I was to take this line up here, so it'd be X, W, and instead of drawing through the points, I made them the endpoints, right? The endpoints, it ends. This line went from being a line and going on forever past X and W to ending at X and W. So this segment or this line segment has endpoints. So if I was going to name this, get one option of, we could do X, W with a line segment above it. You don't have to put two little points on it. Some students do. It's fine if you want to put a little point and a little point right there. If that helps you remember that it's a line segment, totally okay to do. I mean, I would accept it. But then you can also flip-flop it. And again, you don't have to put the points. You can put the points, don't have to put the points. But those are the two ways, right? That's a mini line segment. Up here, we did a mini line with arrows on the end. Here, we have no arrows on the end because it stopped. Didn't keep going. Stopped. And then option 3. You could spell out line segment, or you can just spell out segment. So I'm going to spell out segment. XW, or we could do for segment WX. Okay, so again, my students, speaking to you, you have to answer it in this way because that's the only way you can type it in. Now, I'd like to highlight the difference here is when we were talking about a line, you had this special case where you could do a lowercase letter. A line segment doesn't have a lowercase letter. That lowercase letter is special to a line, and this, so you can put a star next to it, and this special capital letter is specific to a plane, okay? So this is specific to a plane. And sometimes I might not even put it there. Sometimes I'll put the lowercase letter. Maybe I try and trick up my students, you know, see if they'll put point R instead of line R, because that's not a point. That's a point, capital letter. That lowercase r means line, okay? So let's move on quickly to arrays. So these are the last two for this video are going to be array and then opposite rays. So array, this is really important for eventually when we get to angles, is that you really understand what array is. Array has an ending point, has an end point, and then extends from that end point indefinitely. It keeps going forever. So the difference between array and a line is the ray goes off in one direction. So if I label this, let's do capital R and capital S, and I'm going to name this, naming, and I do option 1, and I have one option would be RS with a mini ray above it. Now what's really important about this is, let me also write this below it. There's something that's wrong about this. If I look at this ray, where does it start from and where does it go to, right? Where does it start and where does it go? And it starts at R and goes to S. This says it starts at S and goes to R. That's not right. So for a ray, you can't mix letters. That's the only option for doing it with the little symbol above it. It starts at R and then it goes to S, or it goes through S. So the only other way to name this is ray RS. And again, you could not do, it would be wrong to do that. It's the same reason it's wrong there, is it doesn't start at S and go through R. It doesn't start at S and go through R. That is wrong. You cannot mix the letters, mix the points when naming ray, okay? Hopefully I'm not yelling too loud. I'm used to having to yell over, I guess I'm not used to anymore having to yell over students. All right, opposite rays. Opposite rays, I feel like, is the one that confuses students the most every year. And it's because it looks like a line, and it is a line. But the point is that you label specific things. So for opposite rays, let's do A, B, and C. For opposite rays, you're going to have 3 points. And the important thing of opposite rays is they share an endpoint. And I think of it as a starting point, but technically it's called the endpoint. So if I was to write down ray BC, that means that B is the endpoint. What I just called earlier as a starting point, it's actually referred to as the endpoint because BC, it ends, right? If this is BC, it ends at B, but it keeps going through C, right? So if I was to look at this diagram, what ray shares the endpoint of B? And it has to be going the opposite direction. So if BC is starting here and going this direction, what ray starts here and goes this direction? BA. All right, so it sometimes helps if you draw it out. You can draw a little BC, and then you can also draw right next to it a BA. So you get this shared point of one ray, BA, and another ray, BC. Another way you can write this, so these go together. So these go together because they're opposite rays, plural, 2 things, not one thing, 2 things. Another way you could write this would be BC, and then BA, right? With showing which directions the rays are going. This top one, the ray is going from B through C, and this one's going from B through A. All right, so this would be another way to name the opposite rays. Well, and so that's option 1, and this is option 2. I'm gonna end the video there. It's really just introductory. I'm assuming that I'll probably get questions on it from my students, but I hope that if you watch this video, it was helpful, at least as an intro into starting to learn it. So thank you for watching, and give it a thumbs up if you found it really helpful. And if you didn't, then I don't know, give it a thumbs down. Thank you for watching.